Hello, welcome to this recording of the step-through demonstration of the listening and being listened to exercise, which in a prior incarnation we called the 6-minute exercise using the elements of empathy. So the elements of empathy are these 4 components of empathy that John Kenyon and I came up with, and they are first, presence. So just to be present, not thinking of the future or the past, focused on just what is arising within your awareness, within your consciousness at this moment. So being present, the idea is it gives you more access to, one, your prefrontal cortex. If you're in fight, flight, freeze, you're not going to be able to be present. So if you can pay attention to the physiological sensations that accompany the fight, flight, freeze, it's a way of saying when you're not present. But there are other ways that we're not present, like when we're hungry, when we're tired, things like that. So as you go through your life, you identify when you are not present, and then how develop a strategy for coming back to presence. And that's the self-connection practice is what I'm offering in this training. In this exercise, the listening and being listened to exercise, the first element of empathy is present, and that element is underlies the 3 other elements. It is the foundation upon which you base your listening practice. And so you practice presence. One of the indicators is as you're practicing presence to not be thinking about what the person is saying. Now, it's hard to do this thing called a not thinking, but you can focus on the spaces between the words. These are strategies to not think about what they're doing, what they're saying, is to have a sensation that the words are flowing past you, that you're paying attention to their facial expression, their body language, all of these kinds of indicators of what might be going on with the person. And practice that for at least a minute in this. So we train this to do them to 3 segments. So the first segment is we're going to have a minute for the first element, a minute for the second element, 2 minutes for the third elements, and 2 minutes for the fourth element, total of 6 minutes, hence 6-minute exercise. Not very dramatic, and it takes about 20 minutes. This 6-minute exercise takes about 20 minutes when you do the whole thing, both directions, and with feedback to each other. So that's the first way, so that you don't have to have too much to figure out and learn, is to do it that way. And then the second way to do it, the second version that's referenced in the book, is to put the first and the second elements together in a 2-minute segment, and then a 4-minute segment to put the last 2 elements in there. So you can time this. Your practice partner can time it. You can time it for them. So let's imagine the first version. You've never done this before. You want to get some practice in it. So you're going to do presence, and that underlies everything. And then you do that for a minute. Then the buzzer goes off, and your practice partner is talking about something, or you're talking about something that is important. But the listener is the one who's practicing here. So you decide who's going to be the listener. That person then begins to listen, and you start talking about something that is important to you. And the buzzer goes off, and you pause, and then you keep talking. In the second minute, the listener begins to think about what silent empathy. What might be going on in you? What might be your observation that's stimulating you to have this conversation? What are they? What might you be feeling? What might you be needing? And might you have a request? And if so, what it might be. So that's the second 2 minutes. Then the bell goes off again. And then you have 2 minutes of understanding, as differentiated from needs. Understanding is kind of to make sure the person understands, as a listener, to make sure that the speaker understands that you understand the story, you understand the gist. Because we found that when you go right into guessing needs, that it's jarring for people, even people who are familiar with it. So first you get the gist of their story, you reflect some of it back. And depending upon who they are and what, you may not reflect any of it back. If you're trusting that they trust that you understand them. And so that's why reflecting back is a way of checking whether you do have it, and also confirming to them that you do understand the gist of it. Okay, so you then start reflecting back your understanding of what you've been hearing and trying not to reinforce the judgments that they've been saying in their story, but just to get the broad sweep of the story. Then the bell goes off after 2 minutes, and you're in your last 2 minutes of the 6-minute exercise, and you're going to be guessing needs. Now, your practice partner, even if they've never done NVC before, they may well have said some things that sound kind of like need words. And so you begin to go back to that and checking and saying, so and then you're not strictly going off of the one word need list, but at first you might want to use those kinds of things, but then you want to learn how to speak into their listening, to use phrases that suggest needs that they would feel comfortable hearing. So that's the 6-minute exercise in the first version. Then you stop, you give some feedback. I call it biofeedback, to let the other person know how you felt at various points. So the technical way to do that is to identify the observation. What was the point in time that they said or you said something? And then you report how you felt at that point in time. And that gives the person a frame of reference. And then if they ask you for any other kind of feedback, or if you want to give any other kind of feedback, be sure and check with the person to make sure that they want it. And don't do it unless they ask for it. Don't just volunteer it. Say, I got something I really want to say, but you haven't asked for it. And are you willing to hear what I have to say? And of course, that puts them in a bind, because they don't know what you're going to say. They don't know what the impact of what you're going to say might have on them. So if they're feeling at all fragile or tender, best not give feedback other than the point in time that you're referencing, the observation, and then how you felt about it. Okay, second version. In this version, you're going to put the first 2 elements of empathy, presence and silent empathy, together in 2 minutes, and then you're going to put the last 2-minute segments together in 4 minutes, and that's the understanding and the needs. Okay, so you start out the same way. You decide who's going to be the speaker speaks. The listener listens. The listener and whoever's timing, you do 2 minutes. And the listener is both practicing presence and silent empathy back and forth in their minds. But they're just sitting there being silent. As far as the speaker knows, they're just there. Now, typically speakers will know whether you're off, in cartoon land, or whether you're with them. If you're being present with a person, they know maybe they can't put words to it, but they know that you're with them. And then when you start guessing what silent empathy, guessing what their observation, feeling, need, and requests might be, they know that the focus is on them. It's intangible, but it is real. And that's the first 2 minutes, that's the key piece. But you also continue that in the last 4 minutes, which is the focus, the energy, this ineffable idea of energy, which I don't generally use, but it's applicable here. It's like your focus is on them and you haven't pulled the focus back to you, and you don't during any part of this exercise pull the focus back to you. Okay, the bell rings, 2 minutes have passed, and then you start the clock on the 4 minutes. And then you during that period of time, you alternate between gist, demonstrating understanding of the story by reflecting back, and also making some need guesses as you decide, as you intuit during the process. Then the bell rings, you've done your 6 minutes, and then you do a debrief, again, biofeedback, and you can ask, as the listener, you can ask, how was my reflection? How did you feel when you heard me reflect this? And I saw you go like that, and what was that? And trying to find out what each of you felt at various times in order to get feedback, without telling them what they should have done or shouldn't have done or so on, unless you ask them if that's what they want. But getting a sense of what is going on by them telling you how they felt at various points, and you doing the same to them. So that's version 1, version 2. Then version 3, we're going to have a demonstration of that. That's going to be in a following video. But let me just give you the broad brush of what's going to happen in that 6-minute exercise. In that one, there is no timer, and you just set the timer for 6 minutes. There's no intermediate timed points. So you put the timer on for 6 minutes, and then the speaker speaks and the listener practices presence, practices silent empathy, and practices understanding and needs. And the presence underlies all three, and the silent empathy and the understanding and needs. You weave those in throughout the 6 minutes. So you're trying to get as close as you would to a conversation in the wild, to where you're not demonstrating that you're doing some kind of technique or some kind of something you learned in a workshop, even though you are, but you're just trying to get to a kind of depth in your conversations with the people in your life, in your work life, your home life, or in your community. So that's the listening and being listened to exercise, also known as the 6-minute exercise using the 4 elements of empathy. And thank you. See you around to the next video.